Hello, everyone. Welcome back to StatTech Research's seminar series on measuring progress and well-being. I'm Kelsey O'Connor, one of the organizers. Today, we are pleased to welcome Professor Shun Wang, who will discuss the World Happiness Reports. Shun will speak for around 40 minutes and then address questions at the end. At that time, please raise your virtual hands or post your questions in the chat. And during the presentation, please keep your microphones muted. Another piece of advertisement. Next year, Luxembourg will be hosting the International Society for Quality of Life Studies annual meeting, and it happens to be the 30th anniversary of ISQuals. The deadlines for the first one is coming up at the end of the month, end of November. The abstract deadline is at the end of the year. You could check the ISQuals website for more details. Back to today, just a last reminder, we are recording. And you'll be able to find this and past recordings on our website and YouTube channel. Now to introduce Professor Shun Wang. Shun is a Senior Associate Professor at the International Business School, Suzhou Jiaotong Liverpool University. Sorry, Shun, if I butchered the pronunciation. Before joining in 2022, he was a professor at the KDI School of Public Policy and Management in South Korea. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of British Columbia, as well as an MA in economics and BA in business administration from Peking University. His research primarily focuses on subjective well-being, economic development, and the Chinese economy. He has worked as a consultant for the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. He serves as an associate editor for the Journal of Happiness Studies, and most relevant for today, he is a founding member and associate editor of the World Happiness Report. And for me, that's quite relevant. The first World Happiness Report came out shortly after I started my PhD and has been ever present since. I'm very much looking forward to your talk, Shun. And with that, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelsey. It's my great pleasure to use this time to introduce you the World Happiness Report. Well, you can see that the title is like the 10 years of the World Happiness Reports. Actually, it was proposed by Kelsey. I've been involved in the report since the very beginning, which was 2012, in which year I just graduated from the PhD program. Kelsey just entered the PhD program. Well, this area of study, the topics of happiness has been very hot topics in many fields, including economics and also like psychology. Well, so today I'm gonna briefly introduce you the history of the World Health Report, and also before that I will just introduce you the starting point of the happiness research in economics. Well, later I just share you the distribution and the dynamics of happiness in recent decades based on our research, based on the chapters from the World Health Report. In the last part, I'll just briefly discuss some policy implications of these kinds of studies. Well, it's been more than 10 years since the release of the first report. Well, over this decade, the report has significantly advanced our understanding of the topics of happiness, or sometimes we call it subjective well-being. Well, we have learned objective well-being before, like our income, GDP per capita, or health. But now these kind of happiness studies, sometimes also called studies on the subject well-being, because the measure of the happiness is based on subjective answers. It is quite different from the traditional objective measures such as income. Well, this kind of the report has offered us global perspective on happiness trends, determinants, and also some policy implications. Well, the report is heavily rooted in recent decades of happiness research. Well, this initiative aims to quantify and understand subject well-being or happiness across diverse population, exploiting global survey data and also some regional survey data. Well, the global survey data we mainly use for the study is like from Gallup, the Gallup World Poll. We also have been utilized many local survey data such as the European Social Survey, or like uh, the global ones such as World Value Surveys. Well, before we talk about the origin of the happiness research, I would like to show you the rising interest in happiness in the literature and also in the books. Well, this is taken from one chapter content in World Health Report 2022. And the author is Chris Brenton Lay, who have given a lecture also to here. Um, so this figure shows us that the has been a rising interest in happiness studies in various fields of the literature. For example, the red one here, the pink one, shows the trend for happiness in psychology. We know that there have been a lot of studies in psychology on this topic. There has also been a rising trend in economics literature. You can see that this yellow one, the second one, and particularly since the late 1990s, there has been an increasing trend in the studies in economics literature on this topic. Well, the blue lines shows the general trend for all fields together. Overall, we see an increasing trend, particularly since early or mid 1990s. Well, before that, actually, you can see more literature in psychology than in economics because we only see some dots over there before 1995. So that in economics, that means there were not so many studies in economics on this topic. Well, there has been a reason for that because in a mainstream economics, we utilize the standard utility theory. It's like we infer people's utility based on their preference. We have been standardized those kind of models in our mainstream economics. Well, the way of infer people's happiness based on questionnaire has been kind of abandoned in the mainstream economics for many decades. Well, only after late 1990s, there has been more and more studies on this topic in economics. We can also see the rising interest in this topic from the general books. We know that the Google has been digitalized a lot of books, so they actually have the database which is called Ngram, which can tell us the frequency of all kinds of keywords. Well, this is also taken from Barrington Lay 2022, the chapter of the World Health Report in that year. Well, they show the trend of the word happiness in contrast to economic growth in different languages. Well, let's look at the panel A or left panel first. Well, we can see that we see increasing trend for the keywords in different languages. Well, the most striking one was like in Chinese, this one, the dark red, and also this red one from the German, and the brown one from, not brown, so this yellow one from, dark yellow from French and Spanish. So we see the increasing trend since 2010, very striking increase. That means there have been a lot of mentioning of the word happiness in those books. Well, we also see a general increasing trend in many other languages, such as like in Russian, in Italian, and also English, um, particularly after 2010. Well, in contrast with the increasing trend, the frequency of increasing frequency of happiness in the books, well, there has been general decreasing trend of the frequency of word economic growth, in particular after 2010. But before that, we can see there has been some increase, or at least stable trend of the frequency of the word economic growth. But in particular, after 2010, there has been a general or overall decreasing trend in those languages, like in English, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Russian. So this, the frequency of the word may somehow show the rising interest in happiness, but somehow decreasing interest in the word economic growth. So that means probably people care more and more about our happiness. Well, where does the happiness economy started? Well, we know that Richard Easterling was the pioneer of this field. In early 1970s, Richard Easterling now is a retired professor from USC who pioneered the study of economics of happiness by investigating the relation between money and happiness. So in other words, does money buy happiness, or does economic growth lead to increasing happiness? Well, his pioneered studies led to a very famous paradox, which is called nowadays called Easterling paradox. So he found that at a time point, the happiness varies directly with income. That means in richer countries, the happiness levels tend to be higher, or richer people tend to have a higher levels of happiness. However, over time, the long-term economic growth rate of happiness and income are not significantly related. So in other words, the growth of income does not bring the growth of happiness in some countries. Well, this led to a paradox. That means if at any time point, a richer country tend to be happier, and why we look at this vertically, the economic growth does not bring happiness in some countries. So this actually started the research on happiness in the field of economics. Well, after early 1970s, even Easterling proposed this kind of study, but it does not attract a lot of attention in the field. So it's got forgotten for a while. Only until early and mid 1990s, a couple of economists started to pick up these studies again. And since late 1990s or early 2000s, there are more and more research emerged in the field. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what we mean by the Richard Easterling paradox. Here I show you a few figures which shows the correlation between income and happiness, both the cross-sectional evidence and also the time series evidence. Well, as Easterling found, at any time point, we do find a positive correlation between income level and happiness. For example, here I utilized the Stevenson and Wolfers 2008 paper. Well, this is a comprehensive investigation regarding the relation between income and happiness. So this figure shows the correlation between GDP per capita and life satisfaction in 2006 based on the data from Gallup World Poll. Well, Gallup World Poll is like a global survey conducted every year on a lot of topics, including socioeconomic variables and also happiness data. Well, this figure shows the correlation between the two variables. On the horizontal axis, we show the real GDP per capita in thousands of dollars with log scale. While in the vertical axis, they showed life satisfaction with some transformation. Well, each dot here shows the data for one country. For example, the JOR means Jordan, and JM means Jamaica. So we have more than 150 countries listed in the diagram. Then there are two lines here. One is a line, another one is a curve. Shows the linear and the nonlinear correlation between the two variables. Well, the linear and also the nonlinear relation shows that the correlation is positive. That means in 2006, in general, a country with a higher level of GDP per capita, the country's happiness level tend to be higher. So there is linear relation here. Y equals minus 3.592 plus 0.418 times log G capita. Well, that means at a time point, there is a positive correlation. However, as has been shown by Easterling and also in many later research, we can see that the income growth and happiness growth are not always compatible. So here I just give two examples. based on Easterling's studies. The first one is evidence from the United States. Well, here we can see there are two lines over there. The blue lines shows the trend of average happiness based on the general social service data. General social survey data. Well, I made the averages for every year in terms of the happiness levels, so which is shown by these blue curves. And I also show the GDP per capita in the same period between early 1970s and about 2018, between that period. So you can clearly see that has been up and downs in terms of the happiness levels, average happiness in the United States. Well, we can see a general declining trend since 1990s. You can see here a general overall declining trend. Of course, there are some up and downs. We can see a clear drop of the happiness in 2008 and 9 financial crisis at that time. However, we know that the GDP per capita has been growing a lot during that period, even though there has been subject to some decreases. There are business cycles there, but the GDP per capita has been growing a lot. However, the happiness levels do not increase in that period. So we can see that the happiness growth and income growth are not compatible. Well, now I also show the correlation between the two variables in the United States based on another data, which is the Gallup World Poll. Well, we show the average happiness for between the year 2006 and 2022, I guess. Well, we see a general declining trend in that period. That means the average happiness levels in the US has been decreasing after 2007. Of course, there are some pickup, temporary increase in certain years, but there is a general declining trend. Well, again, we know that in that period, in particular after 2009, the US economy has been growing in most years. So we can see that, and the evidence from the US tell us that the income growth and happiness growth are not always going the same way. Economic growth doesn't always bring in the growth of the happiness. Well, we can also see that in China, we see a different pattern there, a slightly different pattern, but still the income growth doesn't always bring in higher happiness levels. Well, this is the left panel is borrowed from the recent study by Easterling and Wang and also me in 2017, which was a chapter for World Happiness Report. Well, we use a few waves of data, a few data sets to show the dynamics of happiness in China. Well, we first showed the trend using data from World Value Surveys. Well, we generally see a U shape over here. You can see that the upper one. Then we combine the Gallup and China General Social Survey. We see another U shape there. And later we use the regular Gallup survey and we see a general U trend. Then lastly, we also shows that China own survey, Chinese survey, which is called Horizon survey, which mainly covering the urban residents. Well, we see again U shape. So we have this data together shows that there has been a U-shaped relation, a U-shaped happiness growth from 1990 to around 2014. Well, in 1990, China has relatively higher happiness level at that time, but in about 2000 to 2005, the happiness level in China reached this lowest levels in that period, but then started to pick up after around 2005. However, we know that since 1990, the GDP per capita in China has been always growing. And in particular, in 1990s, the economic growth rate in China were kind of very high. In many years, it was over 10%. But the income growth and happiness growth are not compatible again. Well, so this is what we mean by the Eastern paradox. It's like higher income may not always bring more happiness to people. Then what could be the possible reasons? So there are a lot of subsequent studies conducted by Easterling and his co-authors, and also by many other researchers trying to explain what's going on. And there are different types of explanations to this phenomena. Some may argue that people may adapt to the increasing income. Some others may argue that, okay, there are other factors which has been mattered a lot. For example, in the case of China, in the 1990s, there has been reform on the state-owned enterprises in that period. So a lot of people lose their job and pension during the 1990s. So that the people has been heavily affected. But in the meantime, because of the SOE reform, the national economy has been revitalized, has been, uh, started to grow in very rapidly in that period because they just take off a lot of burdens. So that means many other factors may affect our happiness. It was not just income. I think this could be one important reason that we should study happiness directly instead of just inferring our well-being by using the monetary indicators or such as income. So income alone is not enough. There are many other aspects which matters for our well-being. Well, so this is a brief introduction about happiness economics in terms of its origin. Well, we don't have time to go through a lot of later research on this topic. So since late 1990s, there are a lot of researchers who have been working on this field, including Richard Easterling, like John Hallowell, Richard Laird, and Andrew Oswald, Andrew Clark, a lot of economics all over the world who has been studying this topic. People mainly investigate the determinants of happiness, for example, the socioeconomic variables and socio-demographic variables and our surrounding environment, the natural environment, social environment. A lot of factors may affect our happiness. Well, another a relatively smaller strand of literature was investigating how happiness may affect people's behaviors. For example, happier people work harder or more productive. So these are the important strand of studies. This kind of studies also was connected with a lot of policies, public policies. For example, we can investigate whether certain public policies can increase or decrease people's happiness. We can we can conduct a cost-benefit analysis based on happiness. We can also use the happiness measures to assign a monetary value to some non-market goods, for example, the air quality or air pollution. For those non-market goods, we can use happiness measures to assign or to evaluate the monetary values of the non-market goods so that we know how much people are willing to pay for those kind of non-market goods such as air pollution. So there has been a lot of studies since year 2000. Then before we move on to talk about a World Health Report, I would like to give you some concept or definition of the word happiness or subject well-being. You can see that, as I have said in the very beginning, happiness is often used interchangeably with the word subject well-being or SWB. Well, happiness is a self-reported measure of well-being, typically obtained by a psychological questionnaire. Sometimes we also infer people's happiness based on people's words, what they have said, for example, expressed in a Twitter or Facebook. We can just analyze their wordings and to infer people's emotion from that. But in the most popular cases, like we conduct surveys or based on questionnaires to get people's happiness. According to a psychologist at dinner, happiness consists of three distinct but often related components of well-being. The first one is called frequent positive affect. The second one is infrequent negative affect. Here we know that affect also means emotion. And the third one is like the cognitive evaluations, such as life satisfaction, or the indicator we use for the global rankings of happiness, which is called country ladder. So those are evaluative measures. Well, in summary, the happiness generally consists of three types of measures: the positive emotion, the negative emotion, and also life evaluations. Well, we have already discovered that there has been very big differences among the three categories of happiness measures. If you ask people, were you happy yesterday or were you happy in the last hour? It's like emotion. Well, if you ask people, are you generally happy with your life? Well, the answer will be a life evaluation. So we can clearly tell the difference through our analysis. Well, this is the concept of happiness. It is a subjective measure of our about self-perceived levels of well-being. Well, next I'll just briefly introduce you the origin of the World Health Report. In 2011, on July 19th, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution which is called Happiness Towards a Holistic Definition of Development, inviting its members to measure happiness and to use the data to guide their public policy making. Followed by this resolution in 2012, there was a first UN high-level meeting, which was chaired by the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the Prime Minister Tinley of the Bhutan, Prime Minister of Bhutan Tinley. Well, the title of the meeting is called is Wellbeing and Happiness: Defining a New Economic Paradigm. Well, our first World Health Report was prepared for this UN high-level meeting. This report, the first report, was released on April 1st, 2012 as a foundational text for the meeting. It was released in Columbia University, which was organized by Jeffrey Sachs. Well, in the next year, in the same year, the UN General Assembly, its resolution 66/281, proclaimed March 20th as the International Day of Happiness. Well, this International Day of Happiness recognized the relevance of happiness and well-being as universal goals of human beings' lives, and also the importance of their recognition in public policy objectives. So this is the history of a brief history of the World Health Report. Well, since then, we have been produced the World Health Report almost every year. For example, in 2013, we released a report on September 8th. In 2015, we released the third World Health Report. Well, following that, has been released a report on the International Day of Happiness. That means March 20th of every year. We can see that in 2014, we do not have the report because at that time we decided to give a break. But later we see that there has been growing demands for the report, and starting from 2015, we decided to produce and release the report every year. Well, since our very first edition, this report has been explored a lot of areas related with the global happiness, including like we started the how age is related with happiness, and how gender is related with happiness, and does migration affect happiness, and how does the sustainable development is correlated with happiness, and a lot of other topics also. And in particular, we have been spent a lot of efforts investigating the impact of the COVID-19 and subsequent measures on global happiness, particularly in the past few years. In every year, we will release our report. We host some events to release our report. For example, in 2012, in the first wave, for the first wave, we released the report in a UN meeting, and in 2013 also in UN meeting. Well, since 2016, we also have another event in European countries. For example, in 2016, we co-host the event with the Italian central bank. So we hold the events in Rome to release our report. Then in 2017, we released report in Rotterdam also. However, since 2020, when we have the COVID-19 pandemic, most events was held online. Only from since this year, we start to move to on-site events. This year, we released a report in Washington, in the headquarters of the Gallup, and also in London. And then we had an online seminar for the Asia Pacific region. The WHR has been a product supported by, the researchers from different research organizations, as you can see here, like SDSN, the Center for Sustainable Development from Columbia University, the Center for Economic Performance from London School of Economics and Politics, and from UBC, Simon Fraser University, Oxford, and also my workplace, the Shun Liverpool University. The report has been funded and supported by a lot of NGOs, for example, the Ely Foundation, the Blue Chips, and other foundations. And the main data provider is Gallup, because we utilize the Gallup World Poll to make the global rankings. So the report is a partnership of Gallup, the Oxford Wellbeing Research Center, the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network, and the WHR's editorial board. The report is produced under the editorial control of the editorial board. That means the content is in charge by the board only. It was first published by Columbia University for the first wave, but between 2013 and 2023, it was published by the UNSDSM. But from this year onwards, the report is a publication of the Wellbeing Research Center at the University of Oxford. Well, our mission, or the report mission, is to publish well-being data and analysis that enables individuals, communities, organizations, and governments to understand and improve the quality of lives around the world. So you can see that we have put a very heavy emphasis on the data. It's like we need to provide evidence. We need to guide the public policy making based on data. So we aim to release and publish well-being data and also our analysis, so that a lot of partners and stakeholders could understand and also improve the use of the happiness data to guide the public policy makings and also to improve the quality of life around the world. Well, I'll briefly introduce you the editorial board. We have three founding editors, Dr. John Halliwell from UBC and CFAR, and Dr. Lord Richard Leiter from LSE, and Dr. Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University. Well, later we have new editors join in, for example, Dr. Yann Emmanuel Dinier from University of Oxford, who is the chair of the Wellbeing Research Center in University of Oxford. Since this year, their research center will in charge the release and production of the report. Well, Dr. Lara Ackling from Simon Fraser University and me from Shun Liverpool University were also the associate editors for the report. Well, I'll just show you briefly about the table of contents of a recent year's report, so that you can have some idea about what has been covered in the report, in each year report. Well, we have a couple of chapters in each year, from like 4 chapters to 7 or 8 chapters every year, depending on the theme of the year's report. In next year, we're gonna mainly focus on the caravan sharing. Well, we can see that in 2023 and 2024, we have been covered other topics. In 2003, in every year, generally we have a first chapter, which will be a summary of the main content. Then chapter 2, which was a chapter has been involved from the very beginning, is about the global ranking and also the analysis to explain the international variations of happiness. We also talk about some other topics in each year's chapter. For example, in 2023, we focus on the importance of the trust and social connections in times of the pandemic. Well, in 2024, besides the global rankings and analysis of happiness data, we also focus on the happiness by age groups. We talk about happiness of the younger, the older, and those in between. Well, we have many other topics inviting scholars from various fields, from economics, psychology, and sociology, political science. We have researchers from various fields. In 2023, chapter 3, we invite a group of scholars studying the well-being and the state effectiveness, and we also have a paper on the children and well-being, and we also talk about how can we get the data, well-being data from social media. So these were the topics that have been covered in 2023. Well, these are the contents you can see. Well, if you are interested in reading other chapters, you can go to our website, which is worldhappiness.report. You can find all the reports in past years. Well, the report are generally not very technical because we are facing a broad audience. We aim to show the broad audience the content, the research in this field, so that the topics are, the paper are generally not very technical. Well, next, I just briefly introduce you the global rankings and dynamics. Well, the measure we use for global rankings and dynamics are mainly the measure, the life evaluation measure, which is called Cantrell ladder. This is named after a psychologist Cantrell. Well, this measure has been adopted by the Gallup World Poll to infer people's happiness. So the Cantrell ladder is like a question like this. Imagine a ladder with steps numbered from 0 at the bottom and 10 at the top. So on which step of the ladder would you say you personally feel you stand at this time? So it's a pure subjective measure to let people evaluate their own life. You can see there is a ladder like here, from the worst possible life at the bottom and the best possible life at the top. So pick a number between 0 and 10. This is a cognitive measure or evaluative measure of our happiness. Sometimes we also use other measures, for example, life satisfaction, as it has been used in a European social survey. They ask people questions like this. How satisfied are you with your life in general, from 0 to 10? 0 means the least satisfied and 10 means most satisfied. Or sometimes we have this question, how happy are you with your life in general? 0 from 0 to 10. In some other surveys, the response scale may from 1 to 7, 1 to 5, or 1 to 4. Well, these are the very often used happiness measures. To make the global rankings, we use the average value of this response to this question. But there has been a lot of misunderstanding from the media about how we produce the global rankings. They often said that we use 6 indicators to generate a complete measure of happiness for each country. Actually, it's not. We have been said this many times. We don't make any indicator. We just simply make an average of the people's response to this survey question directly, based on recent 3 years survey data. So we collect this, Gallup World Poll collect responses from the survey respondents, and we just make a weighted average using the recent 3 years data. So that this is how we get the country level happiness for each country every year. Well, before I show you the detailed ranking, you can see the global distribution of happiness on this map.
Shun, it's about 4 or 5 minutes left. Excuse me.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, you can see the global distribution of happiness on this map. The greener area means there have been higher levels of happiness. Well, we can clearly see that in North America, Australia, New Zealand, and European countries tend to be greener, right? That means they have a higher levels of happiness. Also, some South American countries. However, in Asia and Africa, these happiness levels are generally low. Well, we can see the global rankings here. From the top to the bottom, we can see that the Northern European countries such as Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden are on the top. The Asian country, Israel, is also on the top. But I guess this was between the data before the war. But this from next year, I guess the ranking of Israel probably will decrease. There are many other countries like Netherlands, Norway, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Australia, all on the top 10. Well, where is the United States? It's not in the top 20. UK is on top 20, and US is like 23rd. It's even below UAE. Well, Asian countries are generally not doing very well. For example, UAE and Saudi Arabia are also good, like Taiwan and Singapore following. And like East Asian countries such as Japan, South Korea are not very good. Even their economic growth are not bad. And China is ranking number 60 in the middle. Well, on the bottom are those least developed countries. They're not a surprise. And also the countries which has been experienced some conflicts and wars, like Afghanistan, Lebanon. Well, we have been trying to explain the international variation of happiness using 6 indicators, 6 variables there, including income, like GDP per capita, and health. In addition to these 2 variables, we also consider some 4 social variables, including social support, generosity, freedom, and corruption. In total, these 6 variables explain about 3/4 of the international variations of the happiness. Of course, there are many other important factors matter, but here, based on availability of data, we have been utilizing 6 variables to explain international variation of happiness. Well, I can also briefly show you the global trend of life evaluations. We mean by the country letter over here. There are 3 lines. The red line shows the population weighted global average of happiness. You can see that in 2008 to 9, the global financial crisis has been decreased happiness a lot. And since 2010, it has been decreasing for many years. Well, this is actually driven by India. India is a populous country, and its happiness has been decreased a lot. But if we do not consider population size, it's like we consider non-population weighted, the blue line, we can see that there has been generally a decreasing trend between 2011 to 2016, but then increased a bit. However, the pandemic has negatively affected the happiness a little bit. But we haven't showed the trend for recent years. I guess there will be some increase later. And also show this for the emotions, positive affect or positive emotion and negative emotion. Well, one notable finding is that among almost for all aspects of the negative affect, there has been increasing trend since 2010. So our world has been experiencing more and more negative emotions, including sadness, worry, anger, and stress. I don't know the exact reasons behind, but I think this is really alarming finding to be which deserve more studies in the future. Well, lastly, I would like to briefly share some policy implications of this report, of the studies. So we show that happiness is a comprehensive measure of human well-being. It can be a measure of policy goal that requires some paradigm shift in governance. The policymakers should and can integrate happiness indicators into their national statistics, like in the UK, to complement traditional measures such as income and GDP. Well, use this kind of new measures, subject measures, government may create more equitable, resilient societies. For example, happiness data can help us highlight the disparities among different socioeconomic and demographic groups so that to tailor the interventions on the special needs to address the special needs of some disadvantaged groups. Well, what about the future? Although there has been some countries which have data on this happiness, but still a lot of countries have no such kind of data every year if we do not use the Gallup poll. So the country have lack of its own survey data. While still many international agencies and governments prefer the traditional well-being indicators such as income, GDP, but we need to give a more important role to the subject well-being indicator because it's comprehensive. It may capture a lot of aspects in our life. So in the future editions of our report, we will try to and faster and further by increasing availability and understanding of happiness around the world, as been measured for almost all countries in the Gallup World Poll. Hopefully we can get more data from other sources. And we hope to draw more ever deeper pool of national and international data and experience to build a better evidence-based for policy decisions. So there will be a lot of work to do. We really invite the collaboration and cooperation of the researchers from all over the world. Okay, that's all for my speech. Thank you very much. Questions, please.
Thank you very much, Shun. First off, everyone, please feel free to either write in the chat or raise your hand if you have a question. I encourage you all to ask away. I'll start, though. Shun, I wonder, if you can comment on the impact. I understand that the idea is to provide evidence to improve quality of life to various different groups or to all groups of society. And that the World Happiness Report is one of the most referenced items media. I think there's a Google study. Can you mention anything further about how people are responding to this, media, governments, etc.?
Well, thanks for the question. We can see that almost in every year, a lot of global media and also regional media has been reported the result from the report, especially on the global rankings. Well, it seems like most eyeball-catching result are the global rankings, which also make the Northern European countries famous these days for them to be a happy country. Well, only in recent years we start to see that there have been more detailed report on some other chapters or some other result from the report. This is something we really want to say. It's not just about ranking. Well, ranking is probably the least important thing from our report. We want to tell people how this data can be used or shall be used for policy making and to infer, to know people's happiness in different groups. However, the rankings attracted a lot of attention instead of other issues. But that's understandable because it's easy to understand, right? But I think that these days, some international organizations or some national or regional governments start to take the happiness more seriously. I'm not sure if it's because of our report, but I do see that more and more people start to know the report, start to know that happiness can be a serious topic to measure our well-being. It could be something important for policy making. The people like from the academia and also from the governments or some other organizations or even from firms. I think that's something good things like people start to know more about it, not just like we talk about happiness just talk about the word. They don't know what it exactly means. I think there has been increasing understanding about the topic. This is some impact. And I also see that in some educational, institutions, for example, university or even high school, they start to use our materials for teaching. I think that's a very good sign so that more and more people will also learn about this topic. But in terms of government actions, some governments, for example, the UAE has been appointed some kind of minister of happiness in the past, but unfortunately, recently they just probably canceled the administration. I'm not sure what happened. But anyway, there are a lot of impact there, but the government actions were still not that much, I guess. Yeah, we hopefully can do more work in the future. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shun. There's a question from the audience, Kayan Hess. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like and ask. Otherwise, I can ask on your behalf. Oh.
I can do it myself. Thank you. Thank you so much for this really informative talk. I wanted to check with you about the last slide. You mentioned in the second point about key support for sustainable well-being. I wanted to get your comments on what do you have in mind that makes up those key supports that are addition for sustainable well-being, please. Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat which part are you talking about?
So it's on the last slide, that second point, that you
Okay.
talked about right at the end, other key supports for sustainable well-being. So a little bit elaboration on what those key supports might be. Thank you.
Okay. So here I want to highlight that there's still a preference for the traditional well-being indicators, for example, the income and employment, or jobs, health, education, to a lot of those traditional well-being indicators. Well, not so many international organizations will really take these our subject well-being seriously. So we urge them to give a more important role to this subject well-being measure, which can be viewed as an umbrella measure. Why we want to say this? Because, well, it was not just the GDP which matters for our well-being. It's not just the traditional well-being measures which matters. As I have been shown here, in our World Health Report, Chapter 2, we always conduct a simple analysis to show that the social variables, such as social support, generosity, freedom, and corruption, those kind of social variables are also important factors which are correlated with our happiness. It was not just the traditional one like GDP per capita or health. And from the content here, we can see that there are important other factors such as the state effectiveness and the altruism matters for our happiness. And we can also see that what else? The mental illness, mental health, these all factors all matter. So it's like, as I've said before, there are many non-income factors which matters. So it's like to support our long-run happiness, sustainable well-being, we need to consider not just the monetary measures or traditional objective well-being measures. We need to consider many others. I can give you an example. As you can see that I've been working in Korea for over a decade. Well, Korea's happiness ranking were not very high. Even its income per capita is not very low. It's quite good, actually. It's high. Their education level is also very high. But the happiness, people are not very happy there. A lot of reasons there. For example, people in their country, the old people are very unhappy in Korea. Well, their young people are also not very happy. And people are not happy with a lot of things. They are unhappy with a lot of things because it's not just income, it's not just about health or education. There are social factors, for example, the perceived corruption, the perceived freedom in our life. These are not very good in the country. So those factors matter a lot for bringing down their happiness in the country. So that's what I mean by encompass GDP and other support. Key support means the social support, like their pension, the many other public support with people. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Francesco. Do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Shun. It was a very informative presentation. My question relates to the use of artificial intelligence and big data to retrieve information on well-being. I'm thinking about sentiment analysis. What is your view about using these techniques and sources of information to integrate survey-based measures of well-being. Do you think, considering the crisis of surveys, that this is going to be the way forward?
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. Actually, we have two chapters in the report in recent years, which were discussing the using of the sentimental analysis. It's like we can try to infer people's emotions from the social media like Facebook, Twitter, or the Xinjiang Weibo in China. Well, I think the study generally support the idea that this kind of study can provide us a lot of important results about people's emotion. We have been seeing has been a high correlation between those kind of measures and the traditional survey measures of happiness. But one thing I can see that those social media data mostly produce as the emotional measures. So it's not about our general life evaluations, for example, the country ladder or life satisfaction. The measures produced by that is more like emotions. This is one thing. Well, but it was still very useful, even it's just about emotion, because we can get the data immediately, right? We don't need to rely on the time-consuming and very expensive survey data. So when there is no data available, no survey data available, then we can utilize the social media data to infer our happiness, in particular our emotion. I think this is very useful. In particular, these days, the AI techniques has been developed a lot. It's probably easier for us to get more information about people's emotion from different sources. It's not just you cannot just get information from our blogs or words. It may also get some emotions in the future from videos or probably in the future. I think this is a very useful measure to capture our happiness, especially when our survey data was not always available in time. For example, during the COVID pandemic, right? When conducting the survey was very challenging, so this kind of happiness inferred from the social media could be very useful. So I really like that kind of study, that strand of study. Thank you.
Thank you, Shun. We
Thank you.
are right at the end of the time, but I'll give people a moment. Oh, we have a question from Ying. Please feel free to
Sure.
go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep short. I've got a question about hedonic adaptation. There is a theory called set point theory that argues our well-being remains stable in the long term. People can adapt to both good events and bad events in their lives. If you get a pay raise, get GDP growth, we're happy for a while, but after a year or two, we return to the baseline. I just wonder whether you see a lot of evidence for that in your research, and if so, does that prevent us from achieving the policy goal of increasing people's well-being in the long term?
Well, thank you very much. Well, this has been one of the most important topics in the research, which is about the hedonic adaptation. It's like whether people does adapt to some achievements or some bad events. We do have some papers on this area, and we do see some evidence about adaptation. We adapt to some positive events and also some negative events, but I think it depends on what kinds of events we're talking about. There are some adaptations about full adaptation, but some others were not. For example, for the unemployment and also disability, the adaptation may not be full. So if there are some bad things happened, even later, the negative impact on our happiness will become smaller, but it will not move back to the original level. And when we have some good thing, for example, our increase our happiness, for example, increasing our income, we may somehow get used to it. So this does pose some challenges of increasing our happiness by increasing our income. Well, this also tells us the importance of some social variables, I guess. we adapt to our higher salary, but we have some other good events happening in our life. For example, you have more friends, you have some gathering with your friends, you join some of this kind of group activity, you help others. This kind of activities will still be important for our happiness. This is also why we emphasize the importance of the non-economic variables, the social variables, pro-social behaviors or stuff. I don't know too much literature on the adaptation to, for example, those kind of pro-social behaviors. I'm not aware of that, but we do know their adaptation to our income and some other negative events. So, as I said, this kind of adaptation also tell us that we cannot fully rely on increasing income to increase people's happiness. There could be a lot of other things to do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shun. I have one question which might help in your response to Ying.
Yeah.
Have you, off the top of your head, do you remember a country that has changed rankings dramatically? Maybe I would say that the biggest success story, who's gone from the bottom, quartile to the top, I don't know, 50% or something like that. Do you remember any countries that have changed like this?
Yes, actually, I have planned for 2 more slides about the changes of the happiness by country to show the biggest change, biggest increase and biggest decrease. Well, I don't remember exactly the number of countries, the countries' names on the top. There are a couple of countries who have been increased about like more than 1.5 over 10 in the past decade in some countries. We do have a lot of increase and also decrease in some other countries. Sorry, I don't remember the names, but I do know that, for example, in the case of China, there has been a big increase in happiness in recent decade. Yeah.
Okay, so if we're seeing large increases, then presumably people aren't always adapting to whatever the circumstances are that's causing this increase.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think we'll close here. And if you have any last comments for us, we can close with them. And thank you again.
Okay. Again, thank you very much for joining us here. So if you want to know more information about the report, please, you can go to the link. Now, Jonathan, our WHR team has been showing the link there. You can see the more content from our website, or also our LinkedIn website there. Okay, thank you very much. Hope to see you again in the future.